This project started a few years ago when I moved to Ipswich, and I made my own house as a little exercise after having done a workshop, a children's workshop, where the children had made the places where they live. And I was quite inspired by one of the children's houses because most of the children were doing this exercise as a view in through a window into the space where they live. So they were doing a lot of interiors, and one of the children wanted to make a work showing her house, and she asked me how to do it, and I thought, well, how shall we do this? And I gave her a way of doing it using layers of clay. And after that I thought, oh wow, I'd love to make my own house like that. And so I did. And when I made my own house, I really loved the process of trying to make a house in such a way that I would show something of the character of the house, and hopefully something of the character of who lives in the house. Because I feel that, especially in Ipswich, a lot of the houses that you drive by really show a lot of character, and they show a great deal about who's living there.
I'm sitting with Mel at 31 Pine Street in North Ipswich, and this house is really old. Do you know how old it is?
It was built in 1860 something.
Okay.
So it is Ipswich Heritage District,
Yeah.
but not National Trust Heritage District. Yeah, it didn't have the railings and all that up when I moved in, but I put it back to the way it was as much as I could.
So almost 40 years you've
Yeah.
lived in this house, and you've got to know this community really well.
Well, we had problems here in 2011 with the floods, and we all worked together during the floods, and we've created a little community where we all look after each other now.
Yeah.
And it worked out really well.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a man from up the other end of the street come down during the floods and say, "You can't live in your house, come and live in mine." I'd never met him before. Him and his wife just offered me their house.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
You've done quite a lot of work on your house since you've been living here.
Yeah.
And you changed the inside around quite a bit, but the outside's still
Because outside's
kind
still
of
the
the
same.
same.
Yeah. Yeah, I put the stove and all that in.
Yeah.
A lot of this is, me and friends have built. We haven't brought builders in to do a lot of it. A lot of it has been done by friends who are old builders that don't work anymore, and they tell us what to do.
Around the front veranda, you've got a little section that if you see someone in trouble, you give them a little bit of shelter for a while.
Yeah. I close off that side veranda, and I'll take homeless people in every now and then, or someone who has trouble. And a lot of the times they have an animal, and a lot of the homes, won't take the animal. They tell them to put them in the pound, and that animal's the only thing they've got. So I'll take them and the animal until they can find a place that will take them.
Yeah. I love the wall that you've got in your house with all your motorbike jackets from all the years that you've been riding. So you started riding a motorbike 50 years ago.
Yeah.
From time to time you'll ride a motorbike with a sidecar with your golden retriever sitting on the side.
Oh, he loves it. They say only motorcyclists know why dogs stick their head out the window.
Oh yeah.
And we do.
The process of doing the research for this project was really, really interesting, and it was fantastic to go and interview all the people who live in the houses and chat to them, and everybody has a story, and it's so interesting listening to everybody's story, and the houses reflect their lives. That is quite a challenge to then try and show that in the work, and try to show in what I'm making that this is the story of somebody's life, this is how people live, and hopefully it'll come through, and people will be able to have an imagining of who lives in the house and what they do. I'm sitting with David at 47 Salisbury Road at his beautiful home, and your home's got a name, and I think there's a story as to how the home got its name.
The home's called Eddington, and it got its name because the person who built the house, Wilfred Foote, proposed to his wife-to-be in the village of Eddington in England. He'd been over visiting friends. He proposed to his wife-to-be, Dorothy, and then he had to come back to Australia. And so during the period when he came back to Australia, he had the house built, because there's a nice little article in the Queensland Times in the Orange Blossoms column in early 1913, where it talks about their wedding at the Methodist Church. It described it as a pretty little wedding, and they described all that people wore, all the gifts that they received, and they had the reception at Wilfred's parents' home, which was Carrigaroo, up on the ridge there, just off Chermside Road.
All right. Yeah. So it was definitely a house built out of love.
Built out of love, and
Yeah.
it was a family home.
Yeah.
It stayed in that family over 2 generations. In fact, it wasn't until 1997, I think it was, when it was purchased after Wilfred's son died. And it was only another family there for about 5-6 years until Pat and I bought it. And when we bought it, we moved in with then 3 of our young adult sort of teenage sons. And again, it was very much a family home. And now, of course, it caters for the grandchildren,
Yes.
who love the verandas and the pool and the garden, of course.
Yeah. So it's you can see that it's still a very much loved home, and that is evident from the beautiful garden that's out front. You've got that magnificent rose garden with all the beautiful edging around all the
Yeah.
garden beds.
Yeah,
And-
well, Pat wanted a rose garden, so, you know, and we love the rose garden. But the edging tiles have a story as well. When we moved in and we were cleaning up the yard, we found a number of these tiles, Edwardian tiles, which were under the tree in the backyard. And they were the original tiles that we used here. And so we had a mould made, and we had many more produced, so that it gave us sort of a nice connection with the past of having a garden that resonated with a house that had been built back in 1912.
Yeah, and they really are a beautiful feature. It was something that struck me when I had first looked at the garden. You've done some alterations to the house,
Sure.
you've done some additions, but you've kept it in keeping with the original design of the home.
Yeah, we wanted to do that. We were able to open up the verandas again, and the front verandas had the balustrading hidden behind windows and some panelling. So all the front balustrading was absolutely original. All the floorboards on the front veranda are original boards, although some of them had come from an old back veranda which we demolished and put on an extension. And the other nice feature, which I think it's almost has it's almost ecclesiastical type image, is the on the squint windows. And while the builders couldn't replicate what's on the front veranda, because I think those boards were probably steamed into shape, nevertheless they've tried to capture the style here, as you see up there above you.
Yeah, and get that curve that's so distinctive, and that you can see on the front of the house. Yes.
But the balustrading is distinctive as well.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a house that was built in 1912, so it has features of the early colonial period, but more particularly the Federation period, where the fretwork and the balustrading became a little more elaborate. And frankly, I've not seen another house that has the same pattern in the balustrading as this one.
Yeah, in fact, another house that have looked at, the person who lives there, it was also a similar story where the house had only had maybe 1 or 2 owners in its life. And so they knew of the original owner, who was the builder, who had said that each builder had their own signature in the design of some of the fretwork or the balustrading, or so it's very interesting to see that there are some similarities, but each one is quite unique. And
we don't know whether it was architect designed or not, although we have a friend who has done a lot of work in looking at the heritage homes of Ipswich. She believes that this house bears some of the trademarks of George Brockwell Gill, who is really known for a number of the brick buildings around the city. Brockwell Gill apparently did do some domestic architectural work as well, but we've yet to find his initials engraved on a bit of balustrading anywhere.
Yeah. And then what I know that when I've spoken to you before, you've said, you know, you really like living here and how you like using the house, and what do you love about living in an old Queenslander?
Well, they take over your life at Old Queenslander. I often joke that you need to have a wheelbarrow full of money to go up and lavish the love on the home. Having said that, they're beautiful, and one of the things that we love about the house is that the verandas allow us to find a nook any time of the day or evening and catch the breeze, different outlook, and it's just sort of lovely to find a spot, maybe to have a snooze, to read a book, to watch the world go by.
The process of making the houses is a layering process, so I do lots of thinnish slabs out of clay, and then I carve each layer so the houses are built up in relief inside their little framed boxes. I'm sitting with Marjorie at her house in 9 Syntax Street in Sadler's Crossing. What I noticed about your house when I first saw it was the interesting front gates, because you said your husband made them with the cut-out animals.
Blank.
Yeah.
And he just got down in his workshop one day and he said, "He made these."
Yeah.
Beauty. I know where they're going.
Yeah. So they look really great on the
So
front
they're
gate.
different.
Yeah, it makes it makes your house unique, because then you have special front gates with those on them. Yeah. So you've lived here for almost 50 years in this house. You know this area really, really well, and
Fairly
well.
Yeah, but there's been a lot of changes since I moved in here.
Yeah.
A few new estates around the place. There was nothing out there over the river, and now there are estates popping up everywhere.
Yeah. When you were young, when you finished your first bit of schooling, you got a job at Londy's Cafe in Brisbane Street. Yeah.
That lasted 4 years, I think.
And then what did you do after that?
I joined the army.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Nursing corps.
Okay.
I always wanted to be a nurse, but I didn't think I had what it took. So I thought, well, I'll give the army a try.
Yeah.
See what happens. And I loved it.
Yeah. What you love a lot about this house is the garden, isn't it?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And that's what I looked at it one day and I thought, that's a pretty drab looking garden. That's when I painted all the rocks.
So that makes you feel
There's
happy
a bit
if
of
you go
colour
outside.
around the place.
Yeah. And then you've also got your good friends, your dogs, Sammy and Khan. And so they keep you company and do gardening with you. And
Oh, they do.
yeah.
If I go down the backyard, give them a couple of minutes and they're down there.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Marjorie. And thank you for letting me come into your house and have a look at everything.
Oh, you're
and
welcome.
I feel that this body of work only scratches the surface of what's available from the idea of living in Ipswich. The richness of cultures, the diversity, people's stories and the structures that house these riches are everywhere. It was so difficult to choose the homes that I've represented in this exhibition, and I think that this is a project that will stay with me for a long time to come.